Good morning, afternoon, or even evening, wherever you are, and welcome to your latest episode of All About Space channel with me, Christophe Paget, with this week the preparation to the IFT number 3, that's the Integrated Flight Test number 3 at SpaceX Boca Chica in Texas. Ariane 6 rocket reaches its biggest milestone so far, and we will revisit Venus for our Astro-beginners. ESA and ISRO have both completed their latest satellite calibration. More on that in this episode. And finally, I will give you a summary of the launches that occur across the world this week. Starbase was once again full of actions, with the last preparation of the Integrated Flight Test number 3. The tank farm has been maintained with new cryogenic bombs and pipes installed. The launch mount has seen some checks of its booster quick disconnect and booster engine startup system. We have seen the booster number 10 leaving the high bay to the launch site and further hoisted onto the launch mount. Starship 28 has followed up closely, and now both are stacked together. Now, as for the previous Starship 25, Starship 28 has been destacked the next day and surely will go through several stacking and unstacking until the flight test. Now, to the new viewers, some SpaceX officials have previously hinted the expectation of the Integrated Flight Test number 3 of Booster 10 and Ship 28 was planned for the end of February 2024. So the space community is anxiously waiting for such a flight, the flight of the most powerful rocket. So please refer to several of my previous videos, either here on All About Space or the previous channel, Space News, for more information about the Integrated Flight Test number 2 to relive such an amazing flight test. Ship 31 now, thermal protection tiles have been added and nearing completion. Both Mega Bay number 2 and the Star Factory are progressing, as you could see, with the roof nearing completion. Finally, SpaceX has 3 attempts to carry out a wet dress rehearsal with booster number 10 and Starship 28 on top, but only managed to achieve a single yet partial rehearsal. The first and second stages of the Ariane 6 first flight hardware have now left their sites from Bremen in Germany and Les Mureaux in France, loaded into their containers and then onto the Ariane Group sailing ship called Canopy, heading to French Guiana to arrive at the end of February. The first flight of Ariane 6 is scheduled between June the 15th and July the 31st, 2024. The side boosters have already arrived at the European spaceport, awaiting final assembly to the first stage Omen core. It will be a spectacular maiden flight, as it has been the case recently for ULA, and I will cover this event, of course. 2 satellites this week have been commissioned: Euclid from ESA and Pollux from ISRO. Euclid is scanning across the night sky, combining separate measurements to form the largest cosmological survey ever conducted with visible and near infrared. Euclid will scan over 1/3 of the sky, focusing on the extragalactic sources. This is a rectangular image that you are looking at, showing an overall projection of our night sky and the areas that the Space Telescope Euclid will observe. Different shades of gray and blue depict the area of the sky covered during Euclid's 6-year survey. A horizontal bright line in the oval shows the Milky Way bound, and the diagonal line shows dust and other sources in our own solar system. An artistic impression of the Euclid spacecraft is visible on the lower right corner. The telescope will stare at one area of the sky for about 17 minutes, producing images and spectra. It will then take about 4 minutes to move to the next area of the sky. POLIX is a payload of the X-ray polarimeter satellite, or XPOSat for short. It was designed to study the pulsars. What is a pulsar? A pulsar are rotating neutron stars observed to have pulses of radiation at very regular intervals that typically range from milliseconds to seconds. Pulsars are very strong magnetic field which funnel jets of particles out along the two magnetic poles. These accelerated particles produce very powerful beams of light. It is basically the space equivalent of a lighthouse. POLIX was calibrated using the well-known Crab pulsar. You could see on your screen the pulse profile generated from these observations, which finally validate the functionality. So POLIX is now ready for business. On this Valentine's week, I thought it was appropriate to continue my refresher course on our solar system with this time Venus, which takes its name from the ancient Roman goddess of love and beauty. Venus is the second planet from the Sun, located at an average distance of 108 million kilometers, or 67 million miles, or even 0.72 astronomical units, and is of similar size as Earth. It spins the opposite direction of Earth and most other planets. A full revolution of Venus, or Venusian day, is 243 Earth day long, longer even than a Venusian year, which is one trip around the Sun, which takes only 225 Earth days. I would hate living there, as it would be a confusing situation between a day or year. Luckily, I will not live there because Venus is much too hot for me, such with the surface hot enough to melt lead, around 475 degrees Celsius or 900 degrees Fahrenheit, and is in fact the hottest in the solar system, even hotter than Mercury, who is even closer to the Sun. Now, the reason being is that Venus's atmosphere is made of 96% of carbon dioxide, therefore trapping the heat in a greenhouse effect, as it is happening on Earth too, also known as global warming, of course, turning Venus's surface water into vapor, which then leaked slowly into space. It might have once been a habitable ocean world like Earth, but that was at least a billion years ago. Venus is only tilted by 3 degrees from its axis, meaning that it has no seasons and therefore it is a baking hot summer the whole year round. It has no magnetic field like Earth, but benefits from the Sun's magnetic field, creating the planet's ionosphere, sufficient to cover Venus of aurora borealis, as you could see on your screen. Very few photos were taken due to the very harsh environment for any probes to survive. However, the only successful pictures taken in 1981 by the Soviet rover Venera show a barren, dim, and rocky landscape, and a sky that is likely some shades of sulfur yellow. The present-day surface of volcanic rock is blasted by high temperature and pressures, which makes Venus's surface impossible to be life-bearing. However, at about 50 kilometers or 31 miles altitude, the temperature and pressure is bearable, and astrobiologists believe that microbes may have survived the highly sulfuric acid clouds which was observed in 1981 by the same Soviet probe Venera, which detected particles in Venus's lower atmosphere about a micron in length, roughly the same size as a bacterium on Earth. According to NASA scientists, none of these findings provide compelling evidence for the existence of life in Venus's clouds, But the question they raise, along with Venus's vanished ocean, make a compelling case for a mission to investigate our temperamental sister planet. There is so much, it would seem, that she can tell us. And finally, Venus has no moon nor rings. It has been a busy week in the rocket industry. February the 14th, our beloved Falcon 9 of SpaceX took to the sky for his Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida for his mission USSF 124 for the US Space Force. On board were two satellites from L3 Harris and Northrop Grumman with their hypersonic and ballistic tracking space sensors, and four Tranche 0 tracking layer satellites from L3 Harris. The destination is classified, but will mostly definitely be aimed at the low Earth orbit. Now, this was the seventh flight of the booster and landed back to site at landing zone number 2. February 15th, we've had three launches, the first one from Roscosmos and two from SpaceX. So Roscosmos launched a Soyuz 2.1A with its Progress MS-26 on board to the ISS, which has taken 2 days to arrive for its resupply mission with 2,518 kilograms or 5,551 pounds of cargo. The rocket took off from its Launch Complex 31-6 at Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. SpaceX then launched a Falcon 9 with a payload from Intuitive Machines for its mission IM-1, a lunar lander called Nova C or Odysseus, on his way to, obviously, to the moon for NASA under the Commercial Lunar Payload Services contract. The launch took place from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This is the first lunar lander running on cryogenic methane and oxygen fuel. Nova C will attempt to land near a crater called Manapert A, which is located some 300 km or 186 miles off the South Pole. This was the 18th flight of the first stage booster and landed on landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Now, this is the second lunar landing attempt of the year, with the previous one from JAXA with his SLIM lander. So click on the link above for more information on SLIM. And the last flight of the day was for once again SpaceX for a Falcon 9 with onboard 22 Starlink V2 minis for his mission Group 714 out of Vandenberg Space Force Base, Launch Complex 4E in California. Now, his booster flew for his second time and landed on the usual drone ship, of course, I Still Love You. Incidentally, this was the 200th successful landing in a row of a Falcon 9 first stage. Now, rather impressive for such a young company. February 17th, JAXA successfully launched his H3 rocket on his second attempt for his mission VP4. It is MHI or Mitsubishi Heavy Industries' latest rocket design, which failed unfortunately in his maiden flight back on March 6, 2023, with the Advanced Land Observation Satellite 3 on board. The H3's second stage engine failed to ignite due to an electrical issue, and the satellite was therefore lost. The first stage was a completely new design, while the second stage was a reused design of the H2 rocket. So it must have been frustrating that the part which was not modified had been the part failing on that previous flight. Anyhow, I'm glad to see that this second attempt was successful, sending the CESat 1E and TIRSAT satellites to sun-synchronous orbit. Congratulations to MHI and JAXA. I leave you this week with a picture from the Hubble Space Telescope of this gorgeous Rosati nebula. The green color from the optical emission spectrum here reflects the hydrogen atoms. The red itself indicates presence of sulfur atoms, as for the blue corresponds to oxygen. Now this image itself spans about 50 light years across the center of the Rosati nebula, corresponding to a width of 473 trillion kilometers or 294 trillion miles. The nebula lies some 3,000 light years away, or 28.4 quadrillion kilometers or 17.6 quadrillion miles, in the constellation Monoceros. Thank you very much for watching this episode of All About Space with me, Christophe Paget. Enjoy your week and see you next week. Goodbye.